Hello everyone and welcome to Seymour Duncan's online course on how to swap pickups in a Tele style guitar. If you haven't already, please download the accompanying PDF. We have some more information in there and it'll be a great resource as you follow along and as well as when you're doing the work yourself. Also, please check out SeymourDuncan.com. We have a lot of great information there. If you go to our resources tab, you'll see links to things like our wiring diagrams as well as our knowledge base. We have a ton of information in there that will help you out. So thanks for watching this lesson, and we'll dive right into the first chapter. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is some of the tools and supplies that we recommend. Now, there's a lot of tools here, and there's going to be some that are essential and some non-essential, but we kind of want to give you the gamut of everything that could help you in swapping out your pickups. And I'll definitely kind of explain which ones are really critical to this process. So let's start off with the most important thing, which is getting some safety glasses. If you don't wear glasses like myself, some safety glasses is really going to be helpful because bits and pieces of solder can fly up and can wind in your eye, or other types of metals can wind up in your eye, and you definitely don't want that. You'd have a bad day. They're relatively inexpensive. You can get them anywhere, any hardware store, either online or locally. The main thing that you're going to be using is a soldering iron, and if you haven't already, check out our how to solder course, because we go into detail about the settings, the type of irons that we recommend, types of solder, and a lot of other things that will help this make this job a lot easier. On a very high level, we recommend a soldering iron that's rated at 40 watts or more. The one I'm using here is something we use here on our production floor, which is a Weller brand, and it's rated around 85 watts. We're using a chisel tip, and the solder that we recommend is a 6040 rosin core solder. Works really well for guitar electronics. You want to get yourself some way of cleaning the tip of your iron. We use these brass pads here that work great. You can also use a sponge. So a few little items there. The next up, more of an essential item, is going to be a screwdriver. We have our Seymour Duncan screwdriver here. So we have that. Another thing, you can have either one of these, which is a pair of tweezers or needle nose pliers. The tweezers are nice because they're very pointy and you can get into very cramped areas. If you're going to use a needle nose pliers, we recommend something very thin so you can get into those tight spaces. So either one will work just fine. You'll definitely need to get a wire cutter. We recommend getting a good one if you can afford it, but most of these are relatively inexpensive, so get the best one you can. And you want to make sure that you only use this for wire cutting versus you do not want to use this on strings. We have a separate one specifically for strings. This one's a little bit more robust, and because strings can actually damage a wire cutter like this, and you want to keep this as sharp and in good working condition as possible. It'll make everything a lot easier for you. Another thing that we recommend is a ruler. This is just to be able to make some measurements, let's say the pickup height on your current pickup, and or making adjustments on the new pickup. So this is just a great tool. It's a shop ruler, and you can find these anywhere, any hardware store or electronics store. The next thing is to definitely get some painter's tape. This is a real handy kind of supply, if you will, because we can tape down hardware, we can tape things and label things using this tape, and it won't hurt your finish on your guitar, and it's a great kind of multi-use kind of supply here. So definitely get some painter's tape. It'll definitely help you out. Another thing we recommend is getting some trays, some type of tray. These are like from our packaging, our pickup packaging. These are great because I can use these to hold, as I'm taking things off the guitar, I can hold my screws and any other type of hardware in these, and that will keep them organized and kind of away from this mat here so I don't end up scratching my guitar. As you can see here, everything is on a mat. This mat was designed for guitar specifically, and it came with this nice neck rest here, so that's something worth getting. You can use other things. I've seen people even use sandbags, that kind of thing, or even cloths to as a neck rest. This is nice because it can be used in multiple directions depending on the type of guitar you have. I have some cloth here. This is also really important, and kind of similar to these wire these wire cutters, is that you want to use the cloth for the specific job, meaning a cloth that you use to protect the guitar is going to be different than a cloth that you would use to clean it, because a protective cloth could get drops of solder on the cloth, and if you use it to clean it, you could end up scratching your guitar. So make sure that you separate those two kinds of activities. A multimeter is kind of a nice to have item because we can check, once we install, we can actually check the DCR of each pickup. So, and it's a real quick and simple way that you are getting the correct reading. You don't have to have that. You can still swap it out without it. It's just kind of a nice to have. Multimeters, you don't even have to get an expensive one. Something in that $20 range works really well. Another thing you'll need, which most people probably have, is a tuner. A winder. Guitar winders makes everything a little bit easier. You can change your strings a little bit quicker. You probably already have one of those. Electric screwdriver. Now you can use an electric screwdriver, but I want to caution you on this because these things can be a little bit cumbersome, and it's real easy to accidentally slide off the screw, and you can end up scratching the finish on your guitar. So use this with caution. I generally like to use just a normal screwdriver because I have a little bit more control over that. But for certain jobs, let's say if you're taking the pickguard off a Stratocaster, this can be a nice quick way to do that. But again, use some discretion and caution as you use this. Also, another thing that I've seen happen is that when you're screwing in the screw, if there's a lot of torque to this, you can actually strip it. So be really, really careful with something like that. Since you're going to be taking your strings off and some of your hardware, I just have some polish here. It's a good opportunity to clean the guitar. A couple extra soldering things that can be helpful. This is what they call a solder sucker. And what's nice with this is, like, if you open up the guitar and maybe you have bought a used guitar and there's a lot of old solder around the pots and everything, this can be a really quick and easy tool to be able to remove some of the solder. In that same range, or I should say family of tools, is some solder braid. This is really useful because sometimes this works a little bit better than the solder sucker. You can get into sometimes a little bit tighter areas, and sometimes it's a little bit easier to work with. But if you check out that how to solder video, I cover all those different types of and how to use those different types of tools. This is kind of also a nice to have tool. It's not essential, but a brush is really nice because we can clean things off. It's great because after I do some work on the guitar, I can kind of clean off the mat. So if I need to flip over the guitar, I know that there's nothing that's going to be abrasive and scratch my guitar. But anyway, this is kind of a good multi-purpose kind of tool. You'll actually find yourself using this quite a bit. I actually like having a brush on handy. This is called Helping Hands. This is a nice little kind of just an extra little tool that can be really useful to hold wires, to tin them. Maybe you can use it to hold a wire in place if you're not comfortable with maybe the angle or something like that. So it's not, again, this is not you don't have to have one of these, but it'll really make things a little bit easier, and you never know when you need an extra helping hand. So that's a quick overview of some of the tools and supplies that we recommend. Again, a lot of these aren't essential, but they are pretty helpful. So depending on what's in your budget and what you have access to, you can kind of pick and choose what you use. One of the main things that when you do start to do a pickup swap or any sort of guitar electronic work is you want to make sure you do have a clean space and enough space where you can be able to have your tools off, let's say, out of the area of the guitar that you're working on. You don't want to have things fall under the guitar and accidentally scratch it. So you want enough space and clearance so things don't get cluttered on the area that you're working. So keep that in mind. You can get sometimes the little cups and things like that can hold some of the tools for you, or you can just lay out some of the essential tools like up front here if you have space, or maybe way off to the side or something like that.